Revenge with Karen.
The day Tyler waltzed into the compliance meeting and called my team background noise with dental plans, I knew the company was on a slow march toward self-immolation. He had that smug MBA energy, collar popped, hair gelled like he was prepping for cologne ad, and eyes scanning the org chart like he was shopping for layoffs. CFO's son, newly minted director of strategic optimization, whatever the hell that meant. He didn't shake hands. He air-fived, said things like synergy swing and cut the fat while sipping a $7 smoothie like he'd invented Excel. No one asked him to speak at that meeting. No one stopped him either. He clacked through a PowerPoint, titled Efficiency Targets Phase 1. Phase 1, it turned out, was me. I'd been the named SOC 2 officer for 7 years. That's 7 years of building risk controls from duct tape and prayer, watching security breaches brush past us like tornadoes, documenting every nightmare scenario a cloud vendor could toss our way. I had 2 external audits under my belt that finished with 0 flags. I had a folder labeled "If you fire me, read this first." No one had ever opened it. Tyler didn't even know what SOC2 meant. I watched him Google it once during the meeting. That morning, as he stood there grinning in his dad's hand-me-down Rolex, called compliance an internal support function and suggested we automate oversight using a bot. Said my department, my team, was redundant, overstaffed. $44,000 per year in savings, he bragged. That's a bonus tier, someone chuckled. I didn't. I just capped my pen and said, are we done here? Oh, and if you're still here listening, I know 95% of you haven't hit that subscribe button. That's fine. If you enjoy watching corporate karma catch up with people who deserve it, do me a solid and click subscribe and like this story. It keeps our team caffeinated and just petty enough to keep telling the truth. Anyway, Tyler left the meeting with his spreadsheet and a smug little head nod. I returned to my office and opened a clean binder. It wasn't rage. It wasn't revenge. It was protocol. I started backing up files. I documented every access token, free compliance designation, every clause where my name appeared as a legal linchpin. Most of the company didn't realize the entire SOC2 audit cycle still hinged on my formal designation. Every renewal, every quarterly submission, every single checkmark had Jennifer S. named contact next to it. No one had replaced me. No one could without notifying the board and filing a formal reassignment. But Tyler didn't know that. Hell, Eagle didn't even check. At first, I thought maybe someone would stop the train, that maybe HR would hesitate, that the CEO, Greg, who once called me the company's firewall, might raise a hand. But nothing. In fact, HR sent over a reclassification form 2 days later. My new title, Compliance Coordinator. My access was restricted. My invite to leadership syncs disappeared overnight. I nodded. No complaints. Even congratulated Tyler in the hallway when he bragged about hitting his first efficiency milestone. He gave me finger guns and called me J-Money. So I printed the SOC2 designation letter, the original one, signed by the board in 2021, and emailed it to myself, time-stamped and sealed. Then I printed 2 copies. One went into my personal archive, the other into a binder labeled Continuity Risk Do Not Shred, and dropped it quietly into legal's shared file room. I didn't tell anyone. See, people assume revenge is loud, that it needs screaming and slamming doors and long exit speeches about how no one appreciates you. But no one appreciates a fuse either until it's lit. It was a Tuesday. Of course it was a Tuesday. The kind of day that smells like burnt K-cups and crushed dreams. Tyler, in his tailored quarter zip and Dad's favorite cologne, clicked to slide 6 of his presentation like he was revealing the cure for cancer. Title: Operational Streamlining Phase 1 Targets. I sat dead center at the table, flanked by 2 members of my now-doomed compliance team, already sensing the guillotine behind his smug phrasing. My left eye twitched the moment I saw my own department name under the targeted redundancies column. He didn't even have the decency to spell my name right, just J. Him's oversight lead. Good morning, everyone, he began like we were about to discuss the lunch menu. I've identified our first big win. Compliance, as we know, is increasingly digital. Tools like LexiBot and Certify now mean we don't need as many boots on the ground. We can sunset 2 full-time roles, consolidate functions, and reclassify the oversight position for projected annual savings of $44,000. He looked up, smiled. That's almost a Tesla lease, folks. I stared at him like he'd just farted in church. Nobody laughed, but a few weak chuckles crawled out of marketing's side of the table. He moved on without missing a beat. We'll be transitioning oversight responsibilities to an automated dashboard. You'll still have visibility, Jen. He gestured toward me like I was the office plant. You're not being let go, just re-leveled. Re-leveled. I was a poorly tuned video game character. Compliance is about frameworks, he continued, not faces. It was then I realized two things. First, Tyler didn't understand what I did, not even a little. And second, no one in the room was going to stop him. Greg, the CEO, sat blinking at the screen like it was in another language. HR avoided eye contact. Legal's intern typed something and nodded. My direct reports were frozen, waiting for me to say something. Anything, I didn't. Instead, I uncapped my pen. Wrote the word sunset on the margin of my notepad, dotted the I in liability for fun. Then I smiled, small, professional, lethal. Understood, I said. That was it. No protest, no speech. Just the quiet clicking of my laptop closing as I rose from the table and left the room. Tyler looked mildly confused, like he expected a hug or a trophy. I gave him neither. I went straight to my office and began downloading every single audit record from the past 4 years. SOC 2 protocols, access logs, incident response plans, change management trails, all of it. I encrypted a copy on my personal drive and another onto a thumbstick I kept in a ceramic mug labeled "Don't Ask It's Gin." Next, I printed the version history of our business continuity plan. Specifically Section 9.7, one no one ever reads because it's buried under boilerplate. It outlined the requirement that a named officer must be officially reassigned within 14 calendar days or the designation becomes invalid. It was my clause. I added it 2 years ago after watching another company eat a 7-figure penalty for mishandling their changeover. I signed that version myself, and the board approved it. Tyler wouldn't know that even if it bit him on the PowerPoint. HR called later that day to confirm my new role alignment. They said I'd now report to the director of admin support. My new duties included document hygiene and process visibility. I said sounds good and asked when my new badge would be ready. They said I could keep the old one. I almost laughed. That night, I stayed late, printed, and labeled the binder with the designation letters, SOC 2 audit trails, every internal memo where I was listed as the responsible authority. I clipped a sticky note on the cover, continuity risk do not shred. I walked it to legal's archive shelf myself. 4th row, bottom left, no cameras, no witnesses, just me and the quiet hum of fluorescent doom. Then I went home, made tea, didn't cry. I wasn't being erased. I was being loaded like a spring. Let them think I went quietly. Let them think the system could run without me. Let them think a $44K efficiency win was worth the fuse I just armed. 3 days after the streamlining, HR sent me a fruit basket. Not a joke. Actual wicker. Shrink-wrapped. Pineapple chunks sweating through a plastic tub like they were ashamed to be part of it. A little card read, "We appreciate your flexibility during this exciting time of change." Signed with a smiley face emoji from Debbie in People Ops. I stared at it for a full minute before sliding it straight into the break room fridge like a time bomb. The vibe around the office had shifted, light, almost festive. My colleagues avoided eye contact like I had a terminal illness. Tyler strutted around like he'd just solved inflation. He started calling me Jen. That alone should have triggered HR compliance. But nothing did, because from their point of view, I was taking it well. No drama, no Slack messages demanding justice. No late-night emails CCing the board. Just me in my corner cubicle printing things, smiling politely, asking for extra folders. The truth was I had unplugged emotionally. Disassociated like my brain was underwater. But I wasn't checked out. I was watching, listening. At one point, I overheard Tyler in the micro kitchen, mid-gloat to the CFO's executive assistant. "She's out in 3 weeks. Saved 44 grand, easy. That's a new SDR and a conference budget." He actually fist bumped someone, over my head count, over the system that kept their audit compliance tethered to the law. Meanwhile, legal hadn't asked a single question. Not one request for formal transition logs, designation updates, risk realignment, nothing. They just filed my HR status change and moved on, like my position was a flavor of yogurt and not the single point of contact for our most critical regulatory framework. That same afternoon, I logged into our certification portal and pulled the SOC 2 contact record. Jennifer Sims, Executive Compliance Officer, named contact, board approval date, March 12, 2021. Still active. Still binding. Exported the record and forwarded it to my personal email with the subject line, "You will need this." Then I took a walk to legal. The room was quiet, law library quiet, like no one breathed unless redlining a clause. I slid the binder onto the fourth shelf, left side, labeled it in bold black Sharpie, "Continuity risk, do not shred." No one saw me. No one stopped me. No one cared. Sat next to a row of old CapEx reports and a dusty binder labeled Q3 Compliance 2017. Just another forgotten record waiting to become essential. That night, I went home and poured a glass of wine that tasted like battery acid and vindication. The kind of vintage you open when your career's obituary has already been published, just not read aloud yet. In my personal archive folder, renamed the digital copies of the SOC 2 trail, trigger wire PDF, named Contact Final Docx, board resolution backup EML, each timestamped, each cross-referenced. I even exported the metadata as JSON files, just in case someone tried to claim file tampering down the line. Some people spend their entire careers trying to be seen. I built mine by knowing where the fire doors were. My mistake had been assuming someone would follow protocol if I disappeared. That there'd be a clean handoff. That legal would insist on a formal reassignment. That HR would realize releveling an executive position without board ratification wasn't just a faux pas, it was negligence. But no one wanted friction. They wanted smooth. And smooth meant pretending compliance was a switch, not a structure. So I let them believe it. I let them toss the matches around, blindfolded in a fireworks factory made of policy binders and unfiled legal gaps. And I sat back, alert, quietly counting down the days. Not for revenge, for inevitability. They hadn't just removed me. They'd untied their own lifeboat. And I made sure the rope was still in my hands. I submitted my resignation on a Thursday morning at 7:12 a.m. Just early enough to beat the HR rush, just late enough to ensure it'd land in Debbie's inbox with her second cup of coffee and her morning motivational podcast. No frills, no long-winded explanation. One sentence, effective 2 weeks from today, I will be stepping down from my position as compliance officer. That's it. No farewell lunch, no all-hands announcement. No cringy Slack thread where people pretend to be sad for someone they forgot worked there. I boxed up my desk in silence, left behind the mug Tyler once gifted me that said trust, but verify, the irony too painful to keep. They revoked my digital access before the end of the day. Standard protocol, they said. Efficiency. I wanted to laugh. The IT ticket was so rushed they forgot to disable my calendar visibility. I could still see the invite list for the upcoming board strategy sync. My name, gone. But Tyler was on it, bolded, highlighted, as if starring in his own little sitcom. The HR exit packet was riddled with mistakes. Wrong job title. Old salary band. Benefits listed for someone 2 roles junior. The final checkbox said transfer of executive duties complete, and the signature field, blank. Not one reassignment entry. No notation of my SOC 2 designation. No formal replacement logged. Not even a courtesy email asking me to brief my successor, because in their minds, system had already absorbed me like a vitamin. That weekend, I updated my professional profile on the compliance registry. Set my SOC 2 certification to inactive executive designation relinquished. Uploaded my resignation acceptance letter. Timestamped. Public. Traceable. Then I updated my availability status, independent consultant controls, and risk mitigation. By Monday, I had 3 emails. One from a boutique compliance advisory firm, one from a cybersecurity startup, and one from the legal division of a company I couldn't name out loud without smirking. Across town, I signed a 6-month consulting agreement and set up a quiet little desk in a co-working space with good Wi-Fi and terrible coffee. The receptionist's name was Darla. She called everyone Han and kept a candy bowl stocked with Werthers like it was still 1998. I didn't unpack much. Just my laptop, USB-C hub, and the hard drive containing the files they thought vanished with my keycard. My old company went on without a ripple. No Slack messages, no pulse checks, no backward glances. Just another name off the payroll and a slightly smaller holiday party budget. But what they didn't see, what they refused to see, was that I wasn't their weak link. I was their linchpin. Without a formal handoff, the SOC 2 audit trail remained incomplete. Without board notification, the regulatory filings still bore my name. And without a designated officer, the audit clock was ticking with a dead battery. Somewhere, buried deep in a SharePoint folder no one had opened in months, sat a clause they'd forgotten. If the named compliance officer is removed and not officially reassigned within 14 days, the company enters automatic noncompliance. Fines retroactive. Escalating. Triggered not by scandal or breach, but by absence. Absence they created, I didn't remind them. I didn't warn them. I didn't even breathe in their direction. Let them think they won. Let Tyler brag. Let Greg sip his bourbon in ignorance. Let legal rest easy under their illusion of process. Because they hadn't replaced me, they had erased me, and like any good erasure, it left a blank space waiting to detonate. 3 months out from the sale, the office looked like a stage set dressed for a billion-dollar play. Conference rooms were booked out weeks in advance. The intern fridge got replaced with a Sub-Zero. Suddenly, everyone had fresh business cards and new headshots. Even Tyler swapped his fake leather portfolio for a monogrammed Moleskine he never wrote in. He strutted through hallways like a man who'd personally invented the concept of mergers. And in a way, I guess he thought he had. $358 million sale was his chance to prove his optimization strategy was more than just buzzwords and layoffs. The buyer, a much larger tech conglomerate known for swooping in on lean startups, loved his pitch. Aggressive streamlining, high-margin pivots, compliance as a service model, whatever that meant. Tyler even coined a term for the internal shift, ops-light resilience, which is MBA for we fired people and prayed nothing breaks. Board ate it up. Due diligence kicked off in a flurry. Tyler was made point of contact for the operations side, which meant he spent most days in meetings with buyer reps, nodding along to questions he didn't understand and smirking every time someone said compliance. Legal kept reassuring the board that everything was moving on schedule. Except it wasn't. Because somewhere, deep in the buyer's fifth-floor legal suite, an underpaid, overqualified junior paralegal named Nadia was combing through archived personnel logs. She wasn't even supposed to be on the file that day. Someone had called in sick. Nadia picked up the review trail, quietly, methodically. She wasn't looking for anything specific, just reconciling named contacts across compliance protocols. And that's when she found it. One record listed Jennifer Sims as the named SOC 2 contact officer. Board approved, signed, valid through current fiscal year. But Jennifer Sims wasn't on the current payroll list, nor was there any board motion appointing a replacement. No transition log, no updated compliance designation, no board communication. Just one missing piece in what was supposed to be a seamless legal puzzle. Nadia flagged the discrepancy in a footnote and added it to the non-material gaps section, assuming someone would take a closer look. No one did. The audit team skimmed it. Legal marked it low risk since it didn't involve revenue. Tyler glanced at the SOC 2 section and scribbled handled in the margin before uploading it to the buyer portal. For a few weeks, everything hummed forward. Press briefings were drafted. The CEO booked a vacation in Tuscany. Tyler started talking about moving to the buyer's headquarters, something about strategic integration leadership. HR began prepping severance schedules for departments unlikely to survive the merger. I watched all this from my tiny coworking desk across town, sipping stale coffee while Darla yelled at someone for stealing the good stapler. I wasn't bitter. I was waiting, because I knew what they didn't. SOC 2 isn't just a checklist. It's a certification tethered to a living, breathing human being. A named officer, someone accountable for security, availability, processing integrity, confidentiality, and privacy. Someone designated by board action to stand in front of regulators and say, yes, this is compliant. And they didn't have one. They hadn't had one for 89 days. The clause I buried in the continuity plan 2 years prior was now silently ticking like a landmine under the conference table. It would only take one person to notice. One question at the wrong moment. One lawyer flipping to the wrong page. The deal, this $358 million victory lap, would go from congratulations to compliance failure in the blink of a redacted footnote. I didn't light the match. I just built the room out of gasoline, and now I could smell smoke. On the eve of the closing, the boardroom smelled like triumph. Catered breakfast, fresh-cut florals, glossy investor packets with gold-foiled logos, everything screaming done deal. The buyer's core team had flown in the night before, briefed, caffeinated, and ready to ink $358 million across dotted lines. Tyler wore a navy blazer one size too small and a smirk two sizes too big. He rehearsed phrases like value synergy and post-close integration cadence in the mirror. Someone had even reserved him a seat with a name placard that said Director, Transitional Ops, a title that didn't exist, but nobody corrected it. He paced the hallway outside the boardroom, glued to his ear, fielding meaningless questions from legal like he was quarterbacking the Normandy landing. Everyone assumed he had this under control. Everyone was wrong, because downstairs, in a glass-walled side room normally used for HR terminations and awkward feedback sessions, the buyer's legal team had called an unscheduled pause. And the reason? Page 43 of the compliance trail. Specifically, the SOC2 designated officer section. My name, Jennifer Sims, was still listed. No strike-through, no transition log, no replacement signature. Just one bold line confirming I was still the executive of record responsible for all audit compliance. Who is Jennifer Sims? Asked the buyer's compliance counsel, a woman named Helena with a voice like an ice cube sliding across steel. Tyler, summoned down to explain, smiled and said, "Oh yeah, she was. Restructured out. Transitioned those duties internally." Helena did not smile back. "Where's the documentation?" she asked. Tyler blinked. "What?" "The board resolution replacing her. Updated designation logs, formal reassignment memo. It should have been filed within 14 days of her removal. Right, but look, it's handled. We've been managing compliance as a team. Collaborative model." Helena's lips curled just slightly. "That's not how federal audit frameworks work." Tyler started to sweat. "I mean, technically, she's not even with the company anymore, but she is still listed," Helena cut in, "which makes your current SOC2 designation invalid. You are misrepresenting named authority, which means every compliance claim since her departure is legally unsupported." A silence followed so thick you could hear the HVAC click. Tyler tried calling legal. No answer. Helena turned to her associate and said, "Request full SOC2 designation trail. I want every board meeting minute, email record, and HR transition log from the past 120 days. The associate nodded and started typing. Tyler stumbled over his words. "The deal's closing tomorrow. This is just like a clerical oversight." "No," Helena said flatly. "This is a breach of due diligence. And unless it's resolved immediately, this deal halts." Across town, my coworking nook that smelled like toner and ancient vending machine pretzels, I refreshed the buyer's public legal filings. Nothing updated yet, but it was coming. I opened my inbox. Helena had found my email from months ago, the one I sent just before toggling my certification to inactive. Subject, per section 9.7, Notice of Designation Termination Attachment. My resignation letter, SOC2 status logs. A cover note that read, "Please note, no replacement has been filed within the 14-day regulatory requirement. Compliance authority remains unassigned as of this notice. Timestamped. Verified. No reply had ever come. Now it was a smoking gun. Back in the glass box downstairs, Tyler begged for time. Helena was already on the phone with the buyer's general counsel. Words like exposure and malfeasance began to circulate. One of the buyer's internal lawyers scribbled a number on his legal pad, $25,000/day. The retroactive fine for operating out of SOC2 compliance. Tyler looked like a man trying to climb out of a grave he didn't realize he'd dug with a Nerf shovel. The board was pinged. The CEO was still en route from the airport. Legal's senior partner was pulled out of a marketing lunch and asked to urgently confirm personnel transitions. There was no fix. There was no one left to blame. The deal was still on the calendar, but the blood was in the water now. And I didn't lift a finger. I just leaned back, closed my laptop, and smiled like a woman who left the fire alarm instructions taped under the detonator. Let them call it a surprise. I called it Tuesday. The final boardroom meeting wasn't supposed to start like this. It was meant to be a victory lap, one final round of handshakes and signatures before the champagne arrived, and the buyer's CFO hit send on the wire transfer that would make a dozen men instantly wealthier by 7 figures. The agenda had been printed on ivory cardstock. The pens were engraved. The caterer stood outside with a tray of salmon tartlets and a bottle of vintage that cost more than my first car. And then came the question. who revoked the named SOC2 officer, hit the room like a pipe bomb. The buyer's lead counsel, a tall man with silver temples and the expression of someone who'd once sued the SEC and won, stood up so fast his chair slammed backward against the wall. Papers fluttered. The CEO flinched. Who, he repeated, holding up a printed copy of my original designation letter, revoked this. Because I'm looking at board minutes from the past 6 months, and her name, Jennifer Sims, doesn't appear once. There's no reassignment, no revocation, no compliance transition. She's still legally the named officer for your audit certification. Dead silence. HR coughed. Legal rustled. Tyler's face went bone white. I think that was handled, stammered the junior counsel from the internal legal team, rifling through a folder that was somehow now empty. Handled by who? The buyer's counsel barked. Because according to this, he flipped the page, compliance documentation is invalid. You've been operating without a legally designated audit contact for 94 days. That's not just an oversight. That's noncompliance. That's liability. Everyone turned toward HR. Debbie, still clutching her color-coded onboarding checklist, looked like she wanted to crawl under the conference table. We assumed she'd transitioned her duties informally, she whispered. We filed her role reclassification with People Ops. That's not how audit frameworks work, snapped the buyer's counsel. There are legal triggers, and you just tripped them all. Greg, the CEO, had been uncharacteristically quiet until then. But now, slowly, he turned toward Tyler with a look I'll remember until the day I die. Not angry, not shocked, just hollow, like something fundamental had cracked in his spine. His voice came out low and tight. Tyler, he said, what did you do? Tyler opened his mouth. No words came out. His lips moved like a dying fish. I thought we could consolidate. Did you file a board resolution? The buyer's counsel cut in. No, but did you assign a new SOC2 officer? I mean, not officially. Did you read any of the continuity plan? The man snapped, waving the binder like a damn gavel. Clause 9.7. Your former officer, Miss Sims, inserted a mandatory reassignment clause. You had 14 days. Missed it by 80. You've been out of compliance for months. You've misrepresented your certification during due diligence. The CEO turned so red I thought he might stroke out. This was supposed to be handled, he said to no one. This was supposed to be, a new voice, smaller, piped up from the corner. Helena, the buyer's compliance counsel, holding her laptop open like it was radioactive. She emailed us, she said, 3 months ago. She flagged the gap, and over her resignation, the designation logs, and the inactive status on the certification platform. She tried to warn us. Everyone turned to look at Tyler again. He looked down at the table, wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. I thought it was just CYA stuff, he mumbled. The buyer's counsel sat back down slowly, folding his hands like a judge preparing to deliver sentence. You didn't just violate your own policy, he said. You falsified audit representation, exposed your investors, your board, and my client to regulatory penalties, retroactive fines, and deal risk clauses. This is a fire alarm, and I'm pulling it. And just like that, the air went out of the room. No one moved. The CEO leaned forward, hands steepled over his mouth like a man praying to a god he didn't believe in. Legal started whispering. HR began typing furiously. The buyer's team stood, almost in unison, quietly exited to confer. You could hear shoes squeaking on polished floors like gunshots. Tyler sat frozen, his monogrammed moleskine open to a blank page. The tartlets outside went cold. Across town, I refreshed the buyer's newswire. No update yet, but it was coming. I closed my laptop, finished my coffee, and smiled like a woman who always read the fine print. The deal was dead in the water by 11:47 a.m. Not officially yet. The buyer's legal team had already packed up their folders, powered down their laptops, and walked out of the boardroom with the kind of practiced calm that only lawyers with nuclear leverage ever carry. One of them even took a tartlet on the way out, like a last meal before execution. Helena's parting words echoed through the walls like a funeral bell. We're pausing the deal pending full legal review. Do not contact us until you have formal audit clarification. Rioting, the door didn't slam behind them, which made it worse. Inside, the boardroom imploded. What the hell is going on? Barked one of the independent directors, veins bulging at the temples. We were hours from close. Legal looked like they'd aged 20 years in 5 minutes. One was already texting outside counsel, another flipping through printouts like the answers might magically appear between the lines. No one could find a single document showing my replacement, as none existed. Across the table, the CFO tried to stem the hemorrhage with spin. It's just procedural, they'll come back. They won't, snapped another board member, a VC who hadn't spoken all morning but was now clutching his phone with a death grip. They're calculating exposure. And we're bleeding fines at $25,000 a day. Retroactive, another muttered, head and hands. 94 days, do the math. $2.35 million in fines. And climbing. The CEO, Greg, finally snapped. Where is she? He hissed. Someone get Jennifer on the damn phone. Tyler, ghost pale and drenched in sweat, whispered, she doesn't work here anymore. Greg shot him a glare that could have stripped paint. You think I don't know that? Call her. Email her. Text her. Find her LinkedIn. I don't care. Fix this. So Tyler did. He pulled out his phone and opened our last text thread, which, for the record, is just a one-word reply from me 5 months ago, noted. He typed, Hey Jen, urgent, need to clarify your compliance role. Board meeting now, please respond. 3 dots appeared, then vanished. He tried again. No response. Called twice. Straight to voicemail. He looked up. She's unreachable. The CEO slammed his hand down on the table so hard the pens jumped. This was your idea. You told us we didn't need her. That the structure was optimized. You had it handled. I thought the clause wasn't enforceable, Tyler croaked. I thought legal would catch it. Legal doesn't write your damn termination memos. One director barked. Another stood up entirely. If this sale tanks, my fund is pulling everything. We're exposed. You said the risk was minimal. Now we're looking at state-level penalties, potential SEC inquiries. Do you have any idea what you've done? Char tried to offer context. We assumed the transition was informal. Since she didn't protest, she did protest. Greg shouted. She left a damn binder in the legal archive labeled Continuity Risk Do Not Shred. It's literally in bold font. Legal's eyes widened. Someone ran to check. Another director, face flushed with fury, turned to the CFO. This is a breach of fiduciary responsibility. If this sale falls through, I will file suit. Better hope your son has a damn good attorney. Tyler didn't speak. He couldn't. He just sat there, crushed under the weight of $358 million unraveling like cheap thread. Across town, in my little shared office with the flickering overhead light, my phone vibrated once. Then again. Then a third time. Tyler, Greg, someone from legal. I turned it face down. My coffee had gone cold, but I didn't mind. Sky outside had darkened just enough to reflect the glow of my laptop screen. I was already drafting a response to another consulting inquiry. The subject line, Post-Audit Crisis Recovery Services Availability Confirmed. Inside the boardroom, someone finally opened the binder, and there it was. My original designation letter, the clause, the 14-day rule, the signatures, the compliance logs, everything they needed months ago. Now, too late. Someone whispered, built the trap before she left. Greg sat back defeated. No, she was the trap, and Tyler, he just stared at the floor, silent, humiliated, cornered by the one person he thought he could erase. By 3:42 p.m., the buyer's legal team had returned, but not to close. Helena entered first, flanked by 2 compliance officers and a man in a Navy suit who hadn't been present that morning. His name was James Lynn, Regulatory Counsel. The way he carried his briefcase made it very clear. This was not a courtesy call. We reviewed your archive, Helena said, voice smooth as a blade. We found the binder. We read the clause. Everyone in the boardroom knew what clause she meant. I wrote it 2 years ago, slipped it into the business continuity plan during a routine revision cycle. It was my insurance policy, my kill switch. One paragraph tucked between IT recovery and remote login contingencies, marked section 9.7, that read, any revocation of the named compliance officer must be formally replaced by board resolution within 14 calendar days. Failure to do so voids audit standing effective retroactively to date of vacancy. It wasn't buried, it was just ignored, and now it had detonated. James Lynn laid the document on the table. The original continuity plan, my signature, and just beneath it, the last edit log. Tyler's. It signed off on the update, without reading it. Greg, the CEO, looked like a man whose soul had been evicted. He didn't speak, he didn't move. Tyler, for his part, couldn't even form words. His face was slick with panic, his hands trembling. Someone had taken his phone. Legal's request. You continue to represent compliance assurance to our board while out of audit standing, Helena said, flipping through her file. That's fraud. Exposed your company to class action liability. James spoke next, calm as a guillotine. We are notifying the Federal Trade Commission and the State Regulatory Bureau. Effective immediately, our purchase offer is rescinded pending formal audit and legal investigation. If material misrepresentation is confirmed, criminal charges are possible. Tyler whimpered something about oversight. No one listened. An investor stood. This sale is now radioactive. Greg finally broke. She was supposed to be gone. Helena looked at him and said simply, she followed protocol. You didn't. Then she turned to her team. Let's go. They left without looking back. That was the moment the dominoes really fell. By 4:07 p.m., the press release was pulled. By 4:21, the SEC inquiry was confirmed. By 4:38, Greg submitted his resignation effective immediately for personal reasons. And at 5:02 p.m., Tyler was escorted out. No security badge, no exit speech, just a man in a wrinkled suit and a 1,000-yard stare, trailed by legal and the quiet horror of consequences finally landing. Across the street, in my fourth-floor office above the vape shop and Pillate studio, I refreshed my inbox. One new message. Subject, consulting inquiry immediate availability. Sender, Helena Wilkes at CompanyCom Body. Jennifer, if you're available, like to retain you for a post-deal compliance rebuild. We believe your insight into continuity architecture could be invaluable. Attached, offer letter. 6-month contract, 6 figures, autonomy guaranteed. I typed one sentence in reply. Per clause 9.7, designation was never reassigned. Then I closed the laptop. The sun was setting behind the skyline, casting long shadows across their building. I could just make out the boardroom from here. Lights still on, tiny figures inside scrambling to salvage the unsalvageable. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't storm out. I didn't need to. I wrote a clause. They ignored it. And when the reckoning came, they did what they always do, looked around for someone to blame. But I wasn't there anymore. I was the silence in the room. I was the line they skipped. I was the compliance they couldn't fake. And now, I'm the one they call for help. Thanks for joining the fun, you office survivors. Subscribe for more switch-flicking drama. Let's make your former coworkers sweat.